let's get do it. Why don't you find a button on one of those keyboards and lay down some kind of beat?
I think we need to cut our losses. We get our family and Portal out of here.
Morty, good music comes from people who are relaxed. Just hit a button, Morty. Give me a beat.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah. You gotta get swifty. You gotta get swifty in here. It's time to get swifty.
Uh-oh, it's time to get swifty. Let's get swifty with some history. Okay, right, guys. You are about to take a medicine through time exam. And it's actually the widest period of history. It's a thematic study. You take an idea, medicine, and you study it through time from 1250 on to the modern day. Of course, with medicine, because of people like Galen and Hippocrates, with their four humours, you study a far wider period than this. So, on medicine, you've really got to know your blocks of time. So, the first block of time is Middle Ages, and that's from 1250 to 1500. Then we have the Renaissance. Then we have what I call Pax Britannica, which is 1700 to 1900. And the modern day, 1900 to the modern day. And you really got to understand your blocks and what comes up in those blocks. So, in the Middle Ages, you've got the four humours, you've got Galen, you've got Hippocrates, you've got the Black Death. And towards the end of the Middle Ages, the printing press is invented, but it makes a massive impact and it kickstarts the Renaissance. And you get Vesalius, he writes his book, which is Fabrica. You get William Harvey, and he writes in De Motu Cordis, that's on the motion of blood. And you get Sydenham, sorry, it's not Sydenham, it's Thomas Sydenham, and he writes 600 pages on diagnosis. He's known as the English Hippocrates. Of course, we got the 1665 Great Plague of London as well. And within Pax Britannica, although we've got this great knowledge that's been discovered here in the Renaissance, in Pax Britannica, we've got a development in treatments because Edward Jenner becomes the first man to develop a vaccination. And then after this, you get a nice bit of continuity, but later within that period, germ theory is developed by Louis Pasteur, and he's helped along by his competitive rivalry with Robert Koch. And obviously nursing goes on massively. That actually says nursing there, believe it or not. There's a massive impact made there by the first female we'll look at this course. That's Florence Nightingale. We've got John Snow, we've got Edwin Chadwick. Public health comes on the agenda. And then in the modern day, we've got Paul Ehrlich developing his magic bullets. They only attack the disease, not the host. We have Fleming, Florian Chain. You won't forget that again. We've got the NHS, and we have the discovery of DNA. That's supposed to be a double helix. Guys, there are things I've missed out there, but that's like broadly what's in those periods. You have to understand like kind of the ethos and the differences between these time periods as well. But as well as this, you've also got World War I in the trenches. So in World War I in trenches, D is for development. We look at the development of new treatments, especially with regard to blood and Thomas splints. And also, we look at shell shock, we look at trenches, we look at the RAMC, the Royal Armed Medical Corps, got 1.6 million men back to the front. We've got the FAMY, the First Aid Nursing Yeomanry, made more of a limited impact. That's because of the constraints upon them, but they help the French because they're rejected by the patriarchal English. And we've got new techniques such as plastic surgery, which was developed by Harold Gillies in Sidcup, Queen Mary's Hospital. It's in Kent there, kind of southeast of London. We've got Harvey Cushing developing neurosurgery. We've got the trenches you've got to look at. And what does KB? See, I've made this little code for myself, and in the most idiotic fashion when I make the video, now I've forgotten what KB stands for. So let's have a cheeky ganders in my medicine booklet. So, key battles, of course, how can I forget? So, you've got the Somme, which is the bloodiest battle in English history. You've got the Battle of Cambrai. You've got the, which is a key tank battle. Tanks, and more tanks, as Indian Idol famously says in his videos, which are probably more entertaining than mine. But mine is, anyway, really focused. So, guys, this is like kind of the broad knowledge which you really need to know for your exam. So, you must know all of these things. And the thing about World War I is actually, it's actually a much smaller course than the medicine course. It's a sub-course. Your exam actually starts with questions on World War I, which we're going to have a look at. But just quickly, before we move on, This looked kind of nicer before. But just some key concerns for this exam. You've only got 75 minutes, and it sounds quite a lot, an hour and 15 minutes. But actually, you would have recently sat your English exam, which was 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Now, if you're an able student, that time would have flown by because, you're just writing and writing, you're locked in your thoughts, and it just... whenever I did exams as a student, because I was just continually writing, it really went quickly by. And so what you're going to notice is that these 75 minutes, the tick-tock of that clock is going to be keenly felt. And what's really irritating from my point of view is that you're not even allowed to take a watch in because modern technology and smartwatches made a nice little avenue for people to cheat. So you've got to keep a key eye on the clock in your exam hall. Now, as well as this, you've got these 75 minutes and 52 marks, which is about roughly 1.5 minutes for a mark there you've got to play around with. You've got unfairly weighted paper. And guys, if you are a slow writer, do you like that there? Slow writer. If you're a slow writer, what you'll notice is actually 20 of your marks occur for the first... Well, isn't even medicine through time. So 32 marks for the last two questions. So for medicine 4 and 5, you've got a 20-mark question, 16 marks plus spag, and you've got a 12 marker there. So that's 32 marks. And so really you've got an unfairly weighted question for these last two questions. So if you are a slow writer, you must ensure that those last two questions have a key focus from you. Even start with them. If you really are slow, start with those two questions there. You'll be doing yourself an absolutely massive favour. It will help you out, and you'll get better grades. Because what happens is that people burn out. They go through the exam, they write far too much for the first 4-mark questions, 8-mark questions, they write essays, and then by the end they can only write a similar amount in volume for those key questions, your 20 marker and your 12 markers. Guys, you can't afford to do that. You're just throwing marks away if you do that. So what I've got here is last year's paper, so 2018, and I've done some example answers for you to help you with that. So your first question really is a gift in my opinion, okay? So remember, you've only got 7 topics which you've really looked at with regard to surgery. And if you look at this question here, describe 2 features of blood transfusions on the Western Front during the First World War. Now, all you really have to do is name a feature and describe it a little bit. It really is that easy. You don't have to write stacks and stacks. The mark scheme's quite open about that. It's just you write about one feature and you describe it. So if you're thinking about blood transfusions, these were developed because of the work of Cole Landsteiner. Now, on the Western Front, the problem with blood is that even though they could transfuse blood to begin with from patient to patient, the blood coagulates, it clots, okay? It becomes thick when it leaves the body. So one thing you can write about is blood coagulation there. So I wrote for that second feature. So blood coagulates, it clots. So in order to store it for the purpose of transfusions, medical scientists firstly applied sodium citrate to stop this. It was a powder which they put on it. Subsequently, it was discovered refrigeration was more efficient, and then that was used. So that's a safe 2 marks there. You've got an example and you've got an explanation. Now, we also know that motorised technology came on leaps and bounds. Now, if you look at any film in the 1920s and even the 1900s, you know that cars were invented. Obviously, Mr. Ford with his excellent, efficient way of building cars on the line there. But anyway, so just what I've written here is motorised blood banks were developed in World War I in order to transport blood to the many casualties on the Western Front. This is more efficient than transporting patients to blood. Now, it's not like a really complex answer because it's not a complex question. Remember, guys, it's just a 4-mark question. So all you have to do is give your example and then explain it, and then you've got your mark. So I'd say that's a safe 4 marks that I've got there on those first two, the 2 features question. So moving on, we're going to have a slightly more complex question now. And this complex question, it's a little bit more tricky. So, okay, so if we look at this. So, how are sources A and B useful for the treatment of battle injury? So, how useful